Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Brothers and sisters, today I'll be talking about constructing research questions. First, we will see what research question is. First, what is the definition of a research question? Research questions are questions that are asked that describe the focus of a research. You have to have a research questions to know what you are searching for. Okay, so a good research question will lead to a good research. Now, a good research question must have these elements: clear, focused, concise, complex, contentious. Clear means it must be straightforward and easy to understand or easy to grasp and does not have hidden meaning. Focus means it is narrow and easily answered within the time and space provided for the research. For example, it requires you to write a research within 1 year, then your research should be focused on questions that can be dealt with within a period of 1 year. Concise means it is clear, precise, simple, short, and sweet. Okay, it does not have hidden meanings like clear and concise means that it does not have hidden meanings. Complex means it is not so simple and straightforward that requires a no or yes answer. It requires analysis, synthesis, and critical thinking in answering those questions. A good research question does not ask you with an answer of yes or no. Contentious means the answers are not straightforward. It requires arguments, it requires analysis, it requires debate, it requires critiques, and that would lead into a good research. Now, a good research questions must also contain these two more elements. Passionate means questions should be on something you are really interested and really love to study. Okay, questions that you have been asking along the way and a long time that you want to focus on this question, something that you probably have a lot of question about and wanted an answer to them. Okay, and it has to be relevance. Relevance here refers to questions should be about the subject matter of your study and not about other discipline. Of course, if you are studying law, then your research question must be about law and legal questions. If you are studying about population or sociology, then it has to be question about population and sociology. Okay, it has to be focusing on the relevance of your disciplines. Okay. Now, what to avoid when you are writing a research questions? Okay, avoid research question that is too broad or too narrow. Just refer back to what a good research question are just now. So, for example, here, why do young people like soft drinks? Now, it is too broad because it refers to young people and soft drinks, which does not indicate what type of young people you are referring to. Okay, and also the second example here is, why do teenagers in love to spend time at Bukit Bintang area? It is too narrow because again it is referring to a particular group of teenagers within a particular area. Okay, so how would you modify this too broad and too narrow research question into a good research question? Try to apply them using the characteristics that we have discussed just now. Okay, now this is another example here. What is recidivist in juvenile justice? The question is about the meaning of recidivist in juvenile justice. Right? Is this too broad? Because there's no specific group of juveniles who has repeated their offences. Okay, and what kind of offences here refers to? All right, and there is another question here. Will dieting ever replace physical exercise in weight management? It is too narrow because it refers to dieting and physical exercise and weight management. but it does not refer to specific group of people. Neither it refers to any timeline. Okay, and try to modify these questions so that it become a good research question. Again, you must refer to the basic characteristics of a good research questions. Now, research questions need not only be simple and clear, but it has to be complex. How do you strike a balance between simplicity and complexity? So basically, what it requires is avoid simple question with simple answer. Okay, so questions like a with question with yes or no answer. Okay, or requires an answer with a single word or single phrase. So that will not be a good research question because it lacks complexity. Okay, give an example here. We have, does exercise and dieting improve quality of life? It requires a yes or no answer there. Okay, but look at a good research question there. In what ways does exercise and dieting improve quality of life for older people? Okay, so the focus here is older people. So it requires you to look for whether exercises and dieting would improve quality of life. So that would allow you to research these questions using either qualitative or quantitative methods, either a survey method or questionnaire method. So that would make it more complex compared to the bad question just now. Does exercise dieting improve quality of life? Now, researchable questions refer to questions that require extensive amount of analysis and discovering of new evidence and reference to materials that will help to answer those questions. So researchable questions means you would have to create a thesis based on data and objective evidence, not based on opinion or value judgment. So here an example, it's a bad research question with this question, which beach is in Malaysia is the best? It would be a good research questions that would allow you to discover more data and require you to be objectively uh, inquire into those questions by finding out materials through various methods such as qualitative methods or quantitative methods. What features do the most popular beaches in Malaysia have in common? So you see that when you compare the earlier question and with this one, you'll find that a good research question will require you to do more than just answer the question based on opinion or value judgment. Now, in research, there are common questions that are continuously subject to a lot of research in many ways, either formal or informal research. I give an example of a research in Islamic banking and finance. There are hundreds of them being done every day. Okay, but there are also uncommon questions being researched upon on the same topic. Okay, if for example Islamic banking, there could be a lot of research on the subject itself, but there are certain questions in Islamic banking may not be subject to many research or rare in a sense that there are not many people who are doing research on a particular question. But I think the simple rules in doing a research question is to avoid common questions, that is research that has been subject to a lot of research by others. Okay, I'm giving example here. For example, it's a bad question to ask about what are the advantages of Islamic banking system in comparison with the conventional system, because I think many people have done this, and in many ways they have modified the questions, but still the focus is which is better, Islamic banking or the conventional system. Okay, but it would be good, for example, to ask a question which is rare in the sense that not many have asked the same questions. How would an Islamic banking system help to reduce an individual financial liability in a personal loan scenario in comparison with the conventional banking system? Okay, so rather than asking a general question which is common, then ask specific questions in the area that requires you to look at specific areas of study, and that is rare indeed. Now, another issue about writing a research question is they are open-ended questions and they are close-ended questions. Okay. Now, a question that starts with a why or what is a good question because it is open-ended, and it allows you to venture into a lot of things and not just a specific issue. But somehow, a why or what question may end up in an opposite way of what you need. Thus, you need a question that has a clear and with specific answer. So what I'm saying here is that it may not be good to have why and what question alone, because sometimes you will be stuck as the answer is somehow limited or narrow. Okay. Okay, in continuance to this question of open-ended question and close-ended questions, I'm giving you an example here. It is bad to ask why do drivers flaunt traffic rules when they are not monitored by the authority. Okay, now compared to a good question where how do traffic regulations prevent drivers from flaunting road traffic regulations? Now, the earlier question, it is considered to be a bad question because it is open-ended, okay, but then again the answer would be very limited and narrow, okay, compared to the second one, which is actually would allow you to venture into a more researchable questions and actually answering a more challenging question compared to the earlier one. So changing from why to how makes stronger research statement. Okay, all right. So in other words, an open-ended questions can use the question with use the question using what and why in the beginning, but somehow or other using a how at the beginning would be better to make it a more researchable research questions. Now, this is to emphasize that research requires not a simple question. It requires a complex question which allow the researcher to do lots of research. Now, a simple questions just require simple answer and thus no much research need to be done, right? So, a complex questions requires extensive reference to materials, searching for materials, extensive use of social science methodology or non-social science methodology that needs the researcher to find answers through the browsing of materials, the deep analysis of sources and so on and so forth. Now here in this slide we have two examples. A bad example is why has the population of migrant workers increased in the past 10 years in Malaysia? So a why questions that require probably a simple answer. It does not require you to go and going deeper or rigorous in your finding of the answers to these questions. But the second questions leads you to look for materials that is relevant, materials that is extensive in nature, materials that would rigorously answer the question. What factors have influenced the increase of migrant workers population growth in Malaysia in the past 10 years in relation to other ASEAN countries? So it requires you to compare as well with other countries that needs you to go about and look for materials not just in Malaysia but elsewhere, even to the extent of going to these countries in ASEAN to look for these materials. So that would be the complexity of the questions. Now, to emphasize on the need to be doing on research questions that is complex and not simple, and also the need to look at controversial issues that requires the researcher to go into discussions of issues using multi-dimensional approaches, right? Or in a simple word, looking at the issues from many angles and not just an A or B angles. I mean, it has to be from angles from the perspective of A, B, C, and D, and even more angles. Okay, so it may not be just sufficient to look at the issues from the advantageous or disadvantageous point of view. It has to also be looked at from the point of view of a neutral person. Okay, so in that respect, controversial issues allows a researcher to go about looking and dealing with issues from multi-dimensional aspects. Okay, this is the examples that I want just to highlight. It's a bad question to ask, is sugar bad for our health? But it is a good question to ask, how would sugar substitute like stevia impacted on the managing and maintaining a healthy lifestyle in the country? Okay, because the bad question above deals with only yes or no answer, that is one. The other one is only a single dimensions of the issue about sugar. Whereas the second question also be actually asking the same question, but requires you to go into multi-dimensional issues like, for example, sugar substitute. Now, how is good sugar substitute compared to sugar? Okay, and of course, that would require also what what is the meaning of managing and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. It's not just about health. It has to be maintaining and managing a healthy lifestyle. Now, it is also emphasized that a good research questions requires the researcher to use primary and secondary data, actual data, okay, and not mere opinion or guess. All right, so that would requires you to go about and find data for the purpose of answering the research question and would not allow you to second guess or provide just an opinion without giving your or without substantiating your opinion with data. Okay, this is an example that you can use to refer to this issue about primary and secondary data, not just opinion. Okay, the bad question would be, are imported vehicles better than locally manufactured vehicles? Okay, that would give you an opportunity to give your opinion based on your experience, but that is not a research. That's just an opinion that is not substantiated or supported by data. But the second question says, when tested for reliability and endurance, how do locally manufactured motorcycles and imported motorcycles compare? Right, so that requires you to go into finding primary and secondary data to support the answer to the question. So that is research. Now, why is it important to have research questions in your research proposals? All right. This is a common question asked by my students, but I believe that the simple answer to these questions are because research questions help you to focus on the specific research question or issues that you are looking for and looking for the answers and looking for the evidence to these answers, looking to support and substantiate your answers based on the questions. It also guides the researcher to the right direction without diverting into questions which is not related or not relevant to the issues or the areas. And thirdly, help the researcher to maintain a research schedule with specific targeted goals to ensure that the research is completed on time. Okay, so it is very much related to the second reason for having a research question, that you have certain period of time that you need to complete, and you don't have all the time in your student years to spend time on your research. It has to be limited to certain period of time. It depends on your scholarship, it depends on your funding, it depends on your it depends on whether you have times to continue with your research when for example, if you're a working person and you take study leave and then your employer wants you to come back on time. So that is some of the limitations that requires you to have directions and goals. That is why research question will help you to achieve that. Now let's look at some examples of clear and unclear research questions. This is just to re-emphasize what I have already mentioned in the previous slides, and also in reference to the elements and the elements of a good research question in the earlier part of the slides. Okay, so unclear example of an unclear research question here is how harmful would exposure to violent and pornographic materials in the net to young persons? Okay, how harmful would exposure to violent and pornographic materials in the net to young person? So the key word here is harmful and young person, and of course it is related to violent and pornographic materials in the net. Right? So there are a lot of assumptions here in this research question. It is unclear because what does harmful means? Okay, is there a specific aspect of harmfulness? Secondly, young persons here, all right, can be translated into many categories of young persons, right? But maybe the clear question on this point would be what action to be taken to deal with violent and pornographic materials in the net to protect the young persons. Okay, we take young person as an element of a general element of generality. Okay, but violent and pornographic materials in the net are the focus of the research, but you will be asking question of what action should be taken rather than asking a question whether it is harmful or not. Okay, it is harmful or not requires you to do a much more unclear and uncertain focus, okay, compared to what action should be taken, because action should be taken would be possible law that we have to deal with this kind of materials in the net. Okay, but when you ask a question about harmfulness of the materials to young persons, then it is difficult to determine. That's the reason why the second question will be much clearer than the first questions. So here we have the justification why the first question is bad, the second question is good. Okay, so among others is the unclear version does not specify the harm that may have caused to the young person by violent and pornographic materials in the net. It is making presumption that harm is already proven. Okay, and secondly, the clearer versions specifies action to be taken and does not assume that these sites in the net will cause harm. And the clearer version focuses on specific action and does not toil on uncertainty and ambiguity. So harmfulness is something which is uncertain, but action that can be taken would be something which is clearer and easy to discuss. Now, the difference between unfocused research questions and focused research question is perhaps sometimes difficult to determine. But let us look at the example here. What is the effect on the environment from global warming? It is unfocused compared to the second question, which is more focused. What is the most significant effect of glacial melting on the lives of penguins in Antarctica? Okay, right. So you can see here, the first question, which is unfocused, talks about environment from global warming. Okay, so the word environment is also general. So is the word global warming. Okay, compared to specific question asked about glacial melting and lives of penguins in Antarctica, which is more focused. First, the focus of environment effect or environmental effect is glacial melting, whereas the causal effect is life of penguins in Antarctica. So it's much more focused than the first one. I have here are some examples of research questions. It is an exercise actually for you to find out and justify which one is good research question, which one is good, which one is bad research question, which one is good, which one is bad. Okay, what effect does sugary soft drink have on young people's diet compared to what effect does carbonated sugary drink have on 15 to 17 years old on their blood sugar content over the period of 24 months? Okay, so this is also another set of research questions which require you to determine and give justification why it is good or bad. Why is the cause of high increase in house prices in Malaysia? Why is the cost, or rather, what is the cause of high increase in house prices in Malaysia recently, compared to what impact have the increase of price of houses in Malaysia on housing supply and demand, and the objective of providing affordable housing to most young married couples in the country. Okay, there's another slides which provide you with sample research question which require you to determine why is it good and why is it bad. How can drunk driving be prevented? What effect do different legal approaches have on the number of people who drive after drinking in ASEAN countries?
So, you have to write a research paper. For some of you, this might mean going to Google, typing in your general topic, and using information from the first 2 or 3 results that you find. For others, this might mean trying to find out everything you possibly can about your topic. Unfortunately, neither of these approaches is likely to get great results. To be done right, research needs to be guided by a focused research question. Without a good research question, you will probably end up with a paper that never really comes together because you didn't have a clear direction. But what exactly is a research question? At the most basic, the research question is just a question related to your topic that needs to be answered. The whole purpose of your research will be to provide an answer to the question. You're probably thinking that this doesn't sound too difficult. If a research question is just a question about your topic, it should be easy to come up with one, right? Well, not exactly. For many students, developing a research question is actually one of the hardest parts of the whole research process. In some cases, a student might not know enough about their topic to even understand the kinds of questions that are possible to ask. Even if the student has some knowledge about the topic, they may still not have a good idea of the whole scope of the topic or of recent developments related to that topic. For this reason, it's usually a good idea to try to do some background research before you try to settle on a specific question. This doesn't have to be extensive or time-consuming. For many of you, simply looking at a Wikipedia article or a few recent news articles related to your topic will be enough to give you some ideas for directions that you want to explore. Once you have a bit of background information, you'll be better able to focus your topic into a good research question. But what makes a question a good research question? There are several things that you need to keep in mind. First, a research question should not be too narrow or too broad. If you could answer your question with a few facts, you're not researching, you're just searching. On the other hand, if you would need to write an entire book to appropriately answer your question, then it's probably not a good question for you either, at least at this level. Your question also needs to be specific. Questions such as, is television a bad influence, is very vague. Which television programs are you talking about? What audience are you talking about? What exactly do you mean by bad? Making your question a bit more precise will give you more direction for your research. A research question should also have some significance. It should be something that interests you, because you will be spending some time with a topic, but it should also be something that other people might find important as well. This doesn't mean that you can't research topics like popular culture or sports or social media. It just means that you need to frame your research in such a way as to make sure the topic is relevant to more than just you. While you want your topic to be significant, you also want to be careful not to ask the types of questions that can't really be answered. Questions such as, why must people suffer? Or what happens after we die? are certainly significant to many people, but very difficult to answer. Keep in mind that research papers are not intended to be philosophical treatises. So, as you can see, asking any old question related to your topic won't work. Fortunately, many poor research questions can be transformed into good research questions with only a few tweaks. For example, the question of why must people suffer could be transformed into a more focused question, such as how have major 20th century Christian theologians explained the purpose of human suffering? Finally, you might also want to make your research question a little bit unique or creative. Some topics have already been researched over and over and over, and you might want to avoid those topics if you can. If you do have a common topic, it's often a good idea to try to find a slightly different angle, something that allows you to add your own twist. After all, research should not be about asking questions that have already been answered many times before.
Created using Powtoon.
And finally, I have a video for you to watch, and perhaps to give you more pointers as to what amount to a research question and how to construct a research question. Thank you very much.